Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to today's episode of Talking Points. I'm your host, Syed Neaz Ahmed. Today in our studio, we have a very distinguished person, a Bangladeshi, born British, living in London, and he has produced so many films for the mainstream media here in this country, and he is currently engaged in producing an epic film, which we'll talk about later. Welcome to the show, Mr. Ruhul Amin. How are you today?
Thank you, I'm fine. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to have you here, and I'm so happy that you could make it today despite your very busy schedule.
I'm very pleased.
Okay. Mr. Ruhul Amin, you have been busy making films in this country. You were born in Bangladesh, and you came to this country, you studied film making in this country. Could you, for the benefit of our viewers, share some of the thoughts that led you to this profession?
Basically what happens, it all started from my childhood. As a child, because I was living in Sylhet town, and it's extremely naturally beautiful nature. It was a diverse community there, a lot of cultural activity. So I grew up within that kind of environment. And I think at the age of 7, somehow I got very much attracted to the nature, which is sort of like tea garden. It's only 2 minutes walk from my home, just across the road.
Right.
So every morning we used to go to the tea garden.
Where was that in Sylhet?
That is Sylhet town, Shahidgarh. And the tea garden is nearby. Then all these Manipuri community, diverse, kind of very colorful, very kind of cultured community. Music is there, theater is there, the cinema, 3 little cinema. We used to go to the cinema with the film. So all that kind of influences kind of attracted me. And somehow, I think naturally I was kind of artistically kind of sensitive. So I took a kind of cinema, theater and nature in a great kind of, I had a great sensibility towards nature basically, and also the pieces of artwork and cinema which I saw.
You looked at nature and you wanted to record it through the lens.
Not exactly. Let me kind of add how exactly happened.
Right.
So at that time, at the age of 7, I got very much involved with the nature and kind of loved all these every kind of cultural activities. And then obviously it's next to my home, which is tea garden.
Right.
And of course, there are 2 different kind of communities in tea garden. Uriya and some people from Madhya Pradesh, they used to work, which is sort of like a
They've been working for generations.
For generations, kind of British brought them. So there was a kind of a derogatory name for them, which is Kuli. And whenever I was a little bit naughty, my mother used to say, I'll send you tea garden.
Yes.
And you have to kind of stay with the coolies, because you are running around and you are kind of...
The concept of coolie is like a porter, isn't it?
It is, But it's in our country, I mean, of course, the British gave that name, but in our community, it was a derogatory name. And the little girl from the tea garden used to come every morning, kind of deliver the milk and everything, but she never stepped into the house. So all that, the question as a little boy...
Was it the cultural barrier, or was it something to do with religion?
It's nothing to do with religion, it's cultural barrier, it's the class, I suppose, yeah. So we were sort of like the lower middle class Bengali babus, kind of, and so a coolie couldn't enter your home. So basically, that kind of started, I started querying why this little girl in a half an hour, sitting there and asking for a ma dood. Nobody's kind of looking at it. And I asked my mother, what is this, why she couldn't, everybody started laughing.
But you use the milk that she brings in.
Yes, of course, yeah, of course.
That's not bad.
So, you see, that kind of, as a child, it gave me something to think about, and then why everybody hated Coolie. So I discovered basically tea garden, and I discovered that community, how beautiful people, and the cleanliness, they have a small garden and all that. So at the same time, I got very much interested in films, and I think I saw a film called Shutorang, done by Subhash Dutta. It's a wonderful film. As a child, I didn't really understand the language of...
He was an established actor, and then he produced
the film, yeah. And he became a great filmmaker. Yes. And also he was a very well-known actor in Bangladesh.
Yes.
And at the same time, I did watch many other films, but particularly Shutorang attracted me. Now if I look back and say why, because I done kind of study film in this country, I analyze and everything. And now I see it was a great masterpiece. The reason for attraction, I think it's partly do with the lyricism and the poetry. So what I can see there is a connection. At the same time, I discovered the beauty of nature.
Right.
I discovered, and also partly the humanity. So I discovered, the different position of the communities within our society, and the humiliation, sort of like the lower classes, the coolie and all these other, kind of everybody kind of used to kind of talk about, derogatory name, and at the same time love for the nature.
Right.
All kind of gave me a great kind of a subject to
What
think
sort of
about.
age frame were you in?
At that time I was age of 7. But
that was a lot for a man of
Yeah.
7 or young boy of 7 to go through.
To go through. But without much understanding, I said, when I went to tea garden and kind of for the first time I went into their home particularly because I was so scared. If my mother throws me out of home.
Were you allowed in their house?
Yes, they were
They
delighted.
didn't ask you to stop at the threshold.
They are delighted. And what basically happened, I discovered again another beauty. Mostly attracted me the cleanliness.
Right.
I came back and I told my mother and everybody, why do you call coolie? Why do you have that kind of resentments to it?
Right.
Of course, they were also not serious. It's just a kind of
Right.
something to say, basically, to put you down. And as a child, I started thinking, if I could do a film on the life of those coolies, I could tell the world how beautiful people they are. So you see, there is a connection of nature and the humanity. And that somehow kind of gave me the greater...
Why did you think of making a film? Why didn't you think of writing? Why didn't you think of something else? Writing a poetry, making a poem?
Because as a child, I think I was very kind of a visual person. So the nature and the visual...
Did you have a camera back then?
No, not at that time. Not at that time. In fact, I wanted to buy one, but I wasn't allowed to buy a camera because you have to study and all that.
Right.
This is not the time to kind of go on and taking pictures and all that. But I was insisting I should buy a camera. So I think it's partly to do with my visual interest. Made me think, and also I fell greatly in love with the Bengali cinema because we used to see regularly what other films are shown.
Even at that age,
that.
at 7?
Because we used to go with the family.
With the family.
In those days, there was a kind of a culture of the local
Once
town
a week or something?
Yeah, once a week or once a fortnight that everybody from the family would go and watch the film. So it was a part of the culture.
The films were also that you could enjoy with your family members rather than alone.
Exactly, and of course, in those days, wonderful Bengali movies, and I often talk about them.
Yes,
sort of the masterpieces
as you
produced.
said, the lyrics were nice, the story was nice, the direction was nice, the photography was nice, and everybody went, spent some money, enjoyed 3 hours and came home satisfied, see?
Extremely satisfied, and not only that, they went to see a book. They used to go say, they used to see a book. So it's almost like an epic story, and a lot of entertainment. And it's not only that. If I look back, some of those masterpieces they produced, like Johir Rahan films, Subhash Dutto, Khanata, and there are many other filmmakers.
But most of the films, don't you agree, or perhaps not, that they are based on fantasies?
No, because what happens in those days, especially sort of like, I'm talking about when I saw it's a kind of little early 70s, But if you look at the films of the 60s, mid-60s, you will see social drama, they used to call. But there used to be a wonderfully captured, Bengali life with Bengali sentiment, their fantasy, of course, a lot of fantasies there, but at the same time, social values. And it's all interconnected with, people could relate easily. And as a result, they were kind of accepted by most of the people. And on top of that, of course, there were some kind of film which is to do with city lives and all that, but at the same time, there are a lot of films which is folk fantasy. Set in middle, I think Arabian Nights and many other kind of Bengali folk stories. And
Ali Baba and 40 Thieves and Aladdin.
Aladdin and there are also films like Laili Majnu and many other kind of local folk stories. Folk stories were captured, and I think the folk music
like
also kind of well.
Rup Kanna and all that.
Patalpuri Rajkanna. It's a wonderful. I still remember. I think this is mostly,
Well, people enjoy this because fantasy. They want to forget their worries and and problems. See,
No, not only that, because that lot later, after liberation, they started making a lot of those films for people to worry their hardship. But if you look at those films in those days, it's not just kind of a pure escapism, not just fantasy. There were kind of social messages.
Right.
And wonderful. If you look at Neel Akasher Niche, if you look at Abuj Mon, and all those films were love stories. But at the same time, kind of a lot of kind of what is Bengaliness, what is our family, what is middle classes, what is lower middle classes values, and the relationship between people, the respect, everything was beautifully captured. If you see, even if you look at the film star of those days, Rahman Shabnam, Rajak Shabana, and then many other kind of what they used to call, these the stars of Bangladesh, even Rajak Koburi, and wonderful.
They've always had
stories.
the couple.
That
that would make or break a film.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's not just to do with fantasy. Most of these films were extremely well done in terms of kind of reach people with some kind of messages.
Right.
And a film like Jivan Teke Neya,
Right. We'll talk about that, Mr. Amin. What really triggered you? I mean, you came over to this country later. Let's forget the age. But you came out to this country, you went to study film. I mean, what really triggered you to study film and go into it? In fact, I mean, being a person who perceived, who looked nature, who loved nature and all that, I think there comes a time in everybody's life that you like nature, see. But then there was something more than that, and that triggered you to go into this profession.
That is extremely kind of beautiful question you have asked. I mean, it is kind of that would possibly what I tell you, your question will kind of encapsulate everything. So basically what happened, that culminated, childhood kind of desire into an obsession. And that obsession kind of, I have to make film. And all the time, I often ask myself, since my childhood, I continued making films, still I'm making film, and dreaming of making bigger film.
Right.
What is that? And what is that motivation? What is that kind of spark kind of led me into this?
Yes.
Now, that is...
we are coming to the end of this segment, but probably we will not have enough time, but we'll continue with this discussion. But please go ahead, yes.
Yeah, so basically that obsession continued. I have to become a filmmaker. And I have to make wonderful films which would kind of represent or capture that notion of ideology which I thought about in my childhood. And partly to do with nature, the beauty of people. And of course, as I grew, I learned it through my studies, through my association in the community. After coming to England, went through extreme kind of time in terms of racism, street racism, and a lot of hardship. All that kind of taught me that I could make beautiful films talking about what is really what I have seen and understood.
Did you come so close to like this, you said, mugging and racism? Did you come so close?
Not only close, I was kind of, there was a youth in the East End of London, as you know. We were victims of racism.
Okay, Mr. Amin, we'll come back and we'll talk about this later in the second segment. Thank you very much, viewers, for being with us, and don't go away, we'll be back soon. Thank you.
আপনারা দেখছেন টকিং পয়েন্ট, সৌজন্যে মাহবুব এন্ড কো অ্যাকাউন্টেন্টস।